All right. We are live here with Bob Nguyen, City Councilman of Millbrae. Thank you so much for joining me, Bob.
Thank you for having me, Bert.
So, first question. So, I don't know, does the city council use group chat
Or what do you mean by group chat like this format here,
like
or?
on Signal? Because you know what's happening with the federal government right now?
Mhm.
How like they're using group chats to like exchange like I don't know, nuclear secrets and stuff like that.
Okay.
So the reason why I asked the question is if the city councilmen of Millbrae have a group chat, I want to be part of it. What do you think?
Okay, so there's laws in place to prevent any issues, at least on the city. My understanding, city level. Again, I'm new to this. I've only been doing this for about 4 to 5 months now, maybe 6. We have something called the Brown Act, and I'm still new again, but my understanding is that the we cannot have a quorum. So just by law, you can't have more than in the case of Millbrae, which we have a council member of 5. If you have more than the majority, which is 3 or above, that's considered a quorum, and we can't really have a discussion of especially city business ahead of any. It has to be publicly available, right? So we just by law we can't even do what we wanted to.
You see the whole irony of this, right? Where at the city level, we have
Mhm.
all these regulations, but at the Fed level, it's okay.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of things to fix. To me, just to be honest, there's a lot. Like, if you look at anything, there's always gonna be a lot of problems, but there's plenty of problems to be fixed at the city level. So I just want to stay focused, right? Like, it's social media. There's just everything, all this information out there. We have plenty to solve here. Trust me. If we go through any agenda item, there's things I won't go into specifics, but even recently, a lot of city level, forget the national level stuff, just city level stuff. There's a lot of discussion going on. So I just prefer my way to just focus on the task at hand. There's a lot to go from city level.
I totally get it. You're going to stay in your lane. I get it.
Mhm. Right. Absolutely.
By the way, I'm just kind of joking around about that.
I
I
get
mean,
it.
I know everyone has views on it, but I just think it's hilarious that at the city level, you guys are already limited, but at the Fed, it, it crazy things are going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there,
Anyway,
there's a lot to go on, yeah, on that,
yeah.
but yeah.
Let's stick to Millbrae because that's your wheelhouse.
Mhm.
So you're a new city councilman. So tell me, how's that going? Because I got to imagine there's like any job, there's some
Mhm.
learning curve going on, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
How
And
you
this is
doing?
you. This is unique. You know this in terms of your career and mine as well. Outside of the city level representation, is that based the beauty of our system is that we get to draw from the population, right? That doesn't have any experience or training on politics. In some ways, I think that's a good thing because it gives you a fresh perspective. You're not diluted by what other politicians have been doing it for a while. Not to say that they have their value too, but we're great because we get rotation into especially the city level where we don't need to have this job prerequisite that many of us have to deal with. Like, let's say you're like a electrician, right? You want to see certification, you want to see all sorts of stuff around like how many houses you've serviced before. But in this case, it's unique in that sometimes too much experience can hurt you, right? You get entrenched in your politics and you don't get a fresh perspective, especially sampling from the ground level where the pretty much the pains of the everyday person, right, gets sampled much more, I think, effectively in some cases. And I know this from my case when I talk to my neighbors to understand what their challenges are, right, especially in the city level. So I have a unique opportunity, and it is a learning curve, to be honest, right? There's things that, for example, there's things that I wasn't even aware of. I just thought city level politics was just, how do I put it, just focus on the city, but there's actually more to it. You have to work on the there's like these committees, right, in the regional level, and I'm associated with 2 right now, like the RMCP, which is the Resource Management Climate Protection, and then the other one being the CMEG, which is Congestion Management, Environmental Quality. So there's these committees out there that are regional partnerships, and then it's important for city members to participate so we can work with our neighboring cities and even region to have a solution that works for everyone. Like, one example is El Camino Real, right? That thing stretches across multiple cities. You can't just have a city level ordinance or resolution to fix the problem. It could be a regional issue. So I'm learning that firsthand. It's not as simple as I thought initially, just going in and we're just going to like tackle, for example, potholes. It's going to be regional. Like and then there's also climate initiatives too. So we're thinking in terms of first principle concept. We're trying to solve as many requirements as we can effectively, right? And there's these committees set up outside of even Millbrae to tackle that. So it's quite a bit of a learning curve, just to be honest. Like even one example is like for the climate protection part of it, there was discussion about hydrogen infrastructure, right? I wasn't even aware of that. I thought we're just going all in electrical, but apparently there's discussions going on and how we store the energy. There's a lot of ins and outs that I'm just getting used to be honest.
I gotta imagine. Yeah, I mean, look, I've been following the Broadway project, right? The railroad, and I didn't even realize, but there's like I think 4 or 5 different like groups that are trying to decide what to do with that project. I mean, it's such a huge project. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of organizations that are contributing to it. So I got to imagine. I mean, that goes along with some of the other projects that the city of Millbrae is working with. So I totally get it. You just got to kind of figure it out. And anyways, so far it looks like you're doing a great job. Are you still enjoying yourself?
I do. Going into it, like I'll just kind of, if it's okay, I'll just give you the backstory why I got into this.
Yeah.
I wasn't like into, I have a new family, and I'm I own a consulting company doing medical device development, and I just thought, okay, that's what I'm going to be doing. And then what happened was we had, I think years ago, a person that was running for at the time, right? And then he actually was successful, but ran for the District 4 where I live, and just going over his ideas, right, on his website, I was kind of concerned actually about the direction of Millbrae, and just talking to people. Like, it wasn't just me. There's a lot of people talking about it. So I learned through a couple of other people, and they weren't happy as well. So we just noticed there's a common denominator. Well, they weren't great. The offering was not good. There was no opposition. This person would have probably just walked in uncontested, actually. So I was even at one point kind of concerned, is there anyone going to run? I can help support that person. No one stepped up, right? Apparently, even a previous mayor was, I think, potentially going to do it, but had to take care of some relative at that time. So no one was running. And uh, I got asked. I got asked by a couple of people, actually, are you going to run? And I thought about it real quick. It was pretty quick. I just said, sure, I'll do it because no one else is going to do it. And that's how I got started, was on the stuff. And then I just went in this fast track of, drinking through a fire hose on campaign. Like, I didn't know anything about campaigning. I just started off like going, okay, I'll just show up and talk, right? I didn't even have a speech prepared. I just thought, these are things I'm passionate about. And I guess that resonated. I believe for a lot of people, if not all the people I talked to so far, they're looking for that authenticity, right? They don't want to see like a prepared like teleprompter where you're speaking like a robot. It just comes from the heart. And for me, there's plenty of, like we talked about earlier, plenty of business to take care of, right? Like I know, like I had potholes near my house that wasn't even serviced for like a couple of months, and okay, well they could look into that. And this other person was more focused on higher level things, if you will. And I think, in my opinion, there's plenty of city stuff to take care of, and that was the wrong direction on one example among many examples. So I decided to run as a write-in candidate because we missed the deadline for the actual candidates, like where you actually get your name on the ballot. So I went and became a write-in candidate. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen the ballot with write-in, but essentially, like I seen it, like your name doesn't show up at all. No one knows unless they've somehow knew about you ahead of time. They don't know that you're trying to run for that position. The long story short, I was able to garner almost, I think, 30% of the votes, which was insane by some people's, like history. Like I don't know about it. I'm like, I still lost, but they're saying typically it's like 1% or even less of the votes for write-in candidacy. So we did good, and from that, but we still lost. Okay, all right. So whatever, we didn't win, and then I just kind of I was participating with the public, but it was not as in a capacity to campaign, but just help people out. And then this recall happened, right, where there was a lot of people that were essentially, for lack of a better term, pissed off at the prioritization of this particular council member. And he just doubled down, right? And he was like, okay, we're going to do this and that. And in some ways, I can see it being potentially beneficial, but in other ways, it's actually detrimental, especially to the city of Millbrae. So wasn't reflected again. once the appointment, once the recall was successful, then the appointment happened, and then I was interested in that again, because I'm like, okay, I already got a little bit of experience that campaign 2 years ago. Why not just write off of that? And I also was encouraged to by other members of the public to do this. So I decided to do this again. And I'll just be honest, like I felt the whole appointment process was even more challenging than the campaign. Even though they say, "Oh, you just get appointed," I'm like these things are like we follow a lot of laws and regulations. It's not like some movie backdoor deal. It's none of that stuff, right? It's you have to have a good. I invite anyone that doubts this, the appointment process, to watch the appointment speeches. Right? It was pretty challenging. I was competing with former mayor, I think it was Paul Cito, and there was another biotech founder, right? So it was a pretty stacked deck for District 4. It wasn't like a shoe-in by any means. And then of course I had my business too. So then we all gave our spiel on what we think would be the priorities, right? And I think, at least from my understanding, is that 2 of the 3 council members that did decide to go forward with me in terms of appointment, like what I had to say in terms of prioritization and how I'd like to approach problem solving on a Millbrae perspective level. So fast forward to today, and now we, just for the 4 or 5 months I've been here, it's drinking through a fire hose is like an understatement. It's insane the amount of the workings that's going on. And I know this from resident perspective. I've had this too, so it totally resonates with me when people said, "It looks easy. Why don't you just fix this pothole? Why don't you do that?" And to those people, I'll be talking to myself right now, like a year ago, right? Let's say I had a time machine. I'll tell myself, look, like the devil's in the detail. Like, just go ahead. If you just like it's one thing to complain about something, but it's another thing to just do the research and go, okay, these were things that were tried before. These were the things that people have tried, have done. And these were also the communication plan or the outcomes, right, from these communications. They've had several committee meetings. They've talked to, they had their town halls, right? They even went one-on-one, that in some cases, door to door to every door in their district, talked to everyone to sample, get the right information, and then came to a not so easy decision. And it's a really decision of trade-offs, right? If you look at any decision, it's going to be, what am I going to get return for what I think I want to give up, right? It's never this 100%. I'm going to get all this utopian like society, and it's not going to happen. It never happens that way anywhere you go. And I invite those people to do that research. Just even do like 10% or even 50% to 50% of the research that we've done. Go through the meetings, talk to everyone, and then try to propose a solution. I'm all ears too. Like I'm actually open. Like I have neighbors that gave me their point of views, and some of them were really educated. And yeah, we can try those out. Those are things that I would invite anyone that has complained about, like, for example, parking for potholes and everything. Not to say we're not looking into it, but there's prioritizations, right? And we want to be cost effective too. We just, for example, one example is let's say potholes. Let's say we go through with the scenario where every pothole that gets complained about gets fixed, right? I don't think until I reviewed the budget or reviewed how the cost it takes to be done and make sure it's compliant within all the rules and regulation, how expensive it is to get it done. And remember, we have to hire someone to do this. It's not just the materials. We're hiring California labor to do this for a couple hours. And you do that across every street and you do the math, it does make sense actually, but then it gets too expensive. So we want to have like a dig once policy where this is a term we use where we try to be smart about how we approach fixing a certain issue, right? Whether it be potholes, like a stormwater drain clog, or even power lines. Like, I think that's PG&E, but like working through all those issues. Obviously, with power, that's like a high priority, so you have to fix that immediately. But a pothole, we've all had this, especially if the street's not dangerous. If it's really dangerous, we'll look into it. But if it's not, we dodge a little bit, but then eventually it will get fixed. And it'll get fixed in a way where you will be more happy with your tax bill later. What you don't want is like your property tax going up for some reason. You're like, why is my property tax going up? Why is part of my water bill going up? Well, if you look a couple of years back, you requested every pothole be fixed when you complained about it. So those are the things that I hope to, at least for some of my neighbors I talk to in District 4, educate on that. Like that's the key piece I hope I bring is the transparency piece that we're talking about here is this is how the city plans things out, right? And you have to look at, you can't just look at things in an absolute sense. It has to be compared to other cities as well, right? So if one example is if your water rate goes up, does the regional water rate go up, right? Or if your potholes aren't getting fixed in the time that you like it, is the potholes in like an equivalent like intersection with equivalent car passing through, right? Numbers of cars passing through, is that getting fixed at that time? Like you got to really do an apples comparison. If you don't do that, then it's really hard to compare results. Like we just forget government, just in general, right? When you're trying to compare effectiveness of, say, for example, you manage a team or effectiveness of your business, the the way I would approach this is just really getting an apples comparison. So like that's what I'm learning right now is just getting that frame of mind in place, and then of course be able to be diplomatic too. I'm not trying to engage in like, I'm not doing engagement farm. I'm trying to get people pissed off. We just want to have like a course dialogue. Like yesterday when we're going through a business districts, for example, I want to go too far in details because we haven't fully fleshed out the ideas, but there were some very passionate members of the public or even business owners, right? Land property owner in the business district complaining about certain things, right? And I really had to break it down to these people. Look, like, have you ever had two friends argue, right? And they both disagree, and then they both look at you. Who do you side with? You're not going to say, "Oh, I'm going to side with this person." You're going to like say, "Okay, I want to hear both of you out, right? And I agree with this person's point of view, and I agree with that person's point of view." So I would, beg people to think that way when they're looking at their city officials, like someone like myself, right? When we have to make a tough decision, it is actually literally, like for me at least, I listen to everyone, and then we make a call, right, based on what we understand the trade-offs, and hopefully I advertise that trade-off in a way that's transparent, so that you're not completely surprised by the outcome. Of course, we can't. If we had the magic bullet for everything, of course everything we fix and one will complain, right? But that's not the case. We can make certain decisions that are less optimum, but at least I can explain to people my thinking process and all of the inputs I've taken in to try to arrive to a decision I think that will give us the highest chance of success in the long term that's sustainable. Right.
Sure.
So that's kind of my line of thinking for city level solving. And going back to the regional stuff, that's definitely the case, right? Like we have to. I think the public. I can reflect on my own experience as a resident, not as a council member, but I don't. At a year ago, I wouldn't have understand the concept of even grants. Like we just think everything's just taxes, right? But there's a significant amount of dollars that come from grants, and that's working with your regional partners from the county, regional, even like in the state, which also provides a grant. So there's a lot at play to get what in my mind is the highest level of quality service. And how quality service is defined for me, at least, is you pay less taxes and you get more in return for services, right? So
Yeah.
like obviously a high good ratio would be you pay barely anything, and then your potholes get fixed immediately. You don't have any clogs in your stormwater drain, right, when it rains a
Sure.
lot. Those are ideas that, like just examples, right, to kind of illustrate what high quality of service means. So that's really, and if you talk to a lot of the people, even the city staff, they have that frame of mind, right? Like, I want to, how do I get the highest quality of a service for the people of Millbrae? And we're all thinking through that. Like, that's what I think about every day. I'm like, okay, what? Like, my go-to phrase, just talking to myself, is, what's the highest level of quality I can get to Millbrae? And then I work backwards from there, right? Given our constraints, given what we want to do in terms of being good regional partners, and also not, I'm a big proponent of not increasing our tax base. I don't believe, just a personal belief of mine is that adding more taxes to thing isn't the best solution, because what I've noticed is that in some budgets, it'll just balloon to capture the dollars that budget you get from taxes. So being efficient with our resources is key, right? And it's easy to get into complacency and say, let's add another tax to things. And then we wind up, one day we're at 10% sales tax, right? When it wasn't 10% at one point in our history. Those are things that I think it forces accountability and a responsibility rather on the city and the decision makers, that we have a limited pool of resources and we need to be really smart about using it. That way we don't get in a situation where we suddenly get into like a structural or a budget deficit for that year. That's, like, in my opinion, the worst, right? Especially if you had a surplus year. You go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was just going to say, from what I read, I mean, Millbrae, compared to all the other cities in San Mateo County, is probably, from a budget perspective, is one of the smaller budgets. Is that true?
It's I don't have the statistics in my head, but it's pretty small. If you look at Burlingame, I think roughly, no, I have to check, but definitely check on this. But I think I heard it was like 2x lower, half the revenue of Burlingame, for example.
Yeah.
So we don't have much to go with, right? Our city makeup is tiny too. If you look at the area in Millbrae, we're like, what is it, 3x3, maybe not even 4, but we're tiny,
like
right?
That, yeah.
About 23,000. It's rapidly growing, by the way, but 23,000 at the last time I checked. And we don't have much space for commercial. I think I heard numbers as far as like 10 or 15% for commercial real estate space.
Sure.
We don't have a lot to work with, right? And all that land counts.
Sorry, absolutely. No. I do want to give you some recognition here, because we met at the Millbrae Educational Foundation Gala, and I was so impressed by you, because you were able to articulate some of the issues that actually go into city council. Because I was the typical residents saying, I have a problem with X, Y, and Z, right? And you were able to articulate it in a way that I understood. And that's something that I really appreciate about you. And I think you're doing a fantastic job. And that's why I was so excited you were able to come and talk with me. The other thing is, I don't feel like city council members actually get the recognition that they truly deserve, because I was trying to watch the meeting, what I think it was 2 nights ago, and man, what is that, like 4 or 5 hours long? I
Yeah, yeah.
mean,
If you include the
you
board
have a
meeting,
life
right?
too.
Yes, right,
You have a
right.
life too. That's some serious commitment, and so I also wanted to thank you personally, just for your commitment and service to the city.
Yeah, no,
So
I mean, to add to that, like it's great that you recognize that. I hope there's others recognize it. Like at the end of the day, you look at, they pay us a stipend. I think it was increased to 900 per month, but come on, that's not even poverty line, right? In Bay Area. So that, that won't even get you like your food bill covered, right? If you're even
yeah,
efficient about it. But the point is that, it's symbolic, right, for pay. A lot of us are just volunteers. Like, I'm not sure if, it's the right presence of mind for some. I know some people know this, but maybe others don't. And to the ones that don't, I would say that, we're all volunteers. I'm not getting essentially paid for this, right? Other than that 900, which doesn't count essentially in the Bay Area, and we're essentially a very motivated group of, people that want to want to like make Millbrae better. Essentially, like I like it was like, and I just explained my story, right? Like I wasn't even contemplating running at one point, but, I just rolled up my sleeve and said, "Oh, fine, I'll do it if no one else is going to do it." And I believe the public doesn't like, there's all these like somethings on social media or next door, for example, saying this and that. I'm like, this isn't like this huge, like this is not some movie where you have these huge egos like, oh, I want to like bank money. Like, no, it's just we're just literally fixing potholes and doing things and prioritizing in a way that we're smart with the city money, so that, and I talked to a couple of people about this too. Like, my background is engineering, by the way, and, the way we get a compliment isn't like, it's kind of, think about like the Bay Bridge, right, or the Golden Gate Bridge. You drive across that thing, you're not thinking, wow, that was a great bridge I just crossed, right? I didn't fall, I didn't break apart, right? You're saying like, okay, I just got through it, but you sure will complain if there's like one of the scaffolding falls off, and you're like, crap, is the thing going to fall apart, right, or is it going to not survive? So that's I think the way, city politics is like, with the council, is that people are just going to complain. Like, even I do that, right? Like, it'll be, okay, my pothole, that thing has been there for years, or, we had this problem with stormwater a couple years back. Yeah, okay, those are legitimate complaints, right? But, you have to think about things that you don't complain about, right? Like,
yeah,
that are smooth, right? And I would invite anyone to do that, right? Where instead of this, glass half full mentality, glass half full is fine for depending on circumstances. Definitely complain. We want to know what's going on, but at the same time, like, have a frame of mind where you have this glass half full now. Okay, so I just complained about something. Mental exercise. Think about the things that you aren't complaining about. Well, you know what? If you're not complaining about it, someone thought about that and implemented a plan to take care of it. Right?
yeah.
It's the same. Like, like if you have like, you went to pick up McDonald's, for example, right? And, you look at each stop sign you had, and you barely had to wait. You were the first car there every time. Someone thought about that, right? Someone did some traffic planning, figure it out for you, so you don't have to worry about it, right? You didn't think about it. So that's like, for me, that's the reward, right? When you don't get the complaints, is you drive through that thing, or, you're able to find. I mean, parking is really contentious, right? But in certain areas, like, I think it's relative to, it's psychological, because I'm a resident for like almost 10 years, and I don't mind driving. I don't mind, like, there's some parking lots that are a bit further out, like one block out or two. Okay, so I get more exercise, right? But that's just me. I understand some people, like, let's say senior especially, they need it. So we do have a lot to work on, but, I would invite anyone that thinks that everything's falling apart, right, is, to put the things that we talked about, into consideration. One is the things that you aren't complaining about, right? Someone took care of that. And two, the things that you are complaining about, look at other cities. Do they have the same problem? Because when I talk to other council members, believe me, they got the same problem. Like,
Of course.
every one of
Cool.
them, right? Like, my brother lives in East Palo Alto, and I had a chance to talk to, I think it was the vice mayor, or, council member, Mark Dinnan. Had a good conversation with him, and same thing. Like, they had like these intersections that were dangerous, right? And I couldn't find parking at this. It was like, this is kind of why I can like fist bump a lot of the other council members, because I'm like, okay, you got this too. So did I. So I would invite
Right.
anyone to do that research and go, look, it's one thing if we're lagging, and, say San Bruno's on top of their game for parking, and we're not, right? Okay, every reason to complain, no problem, right? We'll definitely look into it, even if we're not comparing well. But I think one, it's kind of like the way I relate things is, you know how like we put the, like a lot of California cities, right? You put the recycle bin out, you put the compost bin out, and garbage bins out. No one's forcing you to recycle. No one's forcing you to compost, right? But as a resident, as a citizen of the U.S., even like I have that civic, in my mind, civic responsibility as an individual to not only set a good example, but to just participate in this thing. So then as a whole, we all benefit, right?
Yeah.
So that's the same idea with all these other things too. If we understand the context of the problem, like with parking, with potholes, or with, you know, stormwater drain, then you can understand, like, okay, first principle concepts, and then come to a much better conclusion. And I can say this given the role that I'm in now compared to where I was like a year ago. I'm kind of like talking to myself from a year ago, right? I'm like, if my self complained a year ago, this is what I tell myself, right? Without the context. Like, I'm just like, it's easy for me to complain, but I'll tell my my past self, look, this is why it's complicated. It is that detailed. Dig into the details, right? And where the details don't make sense. If you're in District 4, I've done this with several members of District 4. I'll coffee anyone. I had a rough conversation yesterday with these two ladies that were business owners. Like, they weren't District 4, but they were like it was a funny story. Like, I was about to, like, I do this. I hand off a business card, right? She didn't even touch it. She was looking at me and going, "Oh, do you want me to take that that card?" I'm like, well, it's awkward now. You're making me wait, right? But of course, I'm being patient. So then I explained to her, look, okay, so this is what I stand for, right? Kind of similar to what I talked to you earlier. I get your problems, right? So, but at the same time, we have to understand that there's competing interests. We want to improve, for example, the whole downtown in Millbrae. How do we get there? How do we get to a point where we don't get a slow decay even, right? But at the same time, how do we get to a point where we make a decision to not to avoid that slow decay, but not get into an irreversible situation, right? So you make a key decision, you can't back out of it. So that's what I'm thinking of. And I was able to reach out to these two women that own property, get them to a state to at least understand. And that friend analogy I gave you earlier, right? Just said, look, this is what where the dynamics right now in our position, and just to go through that and get them to buy in was pretty gratifying. And you asked me earlier too, like about like why am I into it? Like, a lot of it is just I do that naturally anyways. Before I was a council member, was just hear people's problem. I just pride myself being a problem solver. So all these aggressions, the way I translate that is not necessarily towards me, is that these people are passionate about something, right? And rightfully so. So it's easy to write them off and say these people are being rude and all that, but they're not hiding anything. Like, they're exposing their emotions out there, even if it appears to be angry. But really, they're being honest with their emotions, which is a good sign, right? It means that they're invested. They care. And now I want to get them to a state where they can at least get to a rational, cordial conversation. Then we move forward with the discussion, right, on potential brainstorming a solution. Not to ride to it. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but just at least get all the inputs in place. And that one of the outcomes from yesterday was just to get all the business owners together and just understand what the real issues are, right? And kind of shift through all the things that we think is noise versus what's real, and then come to. So that was like an example that on top of these other several examples that we've had for the last 4 or 5 months. And apparently, like, it's just every other week was like something big. I thought, okay, we're done with this big topic, and you can look through those old videos, right? We're done, like, we're okay, smooth sailings, more potholes.
Yeah, unless it's 4 or 5 hours long, it's gonna take you a while.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's insane, like how many hours. Like, I didn't realize it, but it keeps me engaged, actually, because when I'm a resident, like, I tune in. For example, I do the Zoom, or I tune into the meeting live even, or I watch an old video. We have this, like, when you watch YouTube, right? You have this option, like, we have this really instant gratification psychology where I'll just close the window, right? I don't have to go through this. Like, that was great. That was a great luxury people don't understand they have. Like, I can't just delete myself from the council, right? I have to still be there. So it forces me into a paradigm of, I have to listen now. I have to be attentive. I have to do the research. And that's great, actually. It's kind of like good habits, right? Like, how your parents, when you were young, told you to brush your teeth and all that. Like, there's an actual good outcome to that, despite being, at that time, for me, immature about, like, not wanting to brush my teeth, right? So that's, I think,
that's a great perspective, Bob. And so let me do this, because I did promise you this was going to be done roughly a half an hour, so we might go a little bit longer. I want to wrap this up by just asking you one question. What does Millbrae look like 5 years from now for you? What is your ideal?
So we're going to strike, like, this is my ideal. I can't say this for obviously the other council members or even the certain groups within Millbrae,
Just
but
yours.
I think for me, it's going to be a hybrid approach, right? Because there's a couple of things, and this is part of the appointment speech that I did, is carefully managing the infrastructure. We're one of the fastest growing cities in the region, if not the fastest, at least in the peninsula. But
Based
we're
on
up there, right?
population?
Population, yeah. We're
Okay.
up there. We're going to be up there, and it's managing the existing infrastructure and also managing the growth of that infrastructure, how we see it in the next couple of years. So there's two different statements, right? One is today, the other is the careful management of that. And going back to irreversible decisions, right? We don't want to make a rash decision in a hurry only to have to correct problems eventually, right? And so careful management. So it's hybrid, like to answer your question, hybrid approach. There's a couple of key factors. One is to maintain the character of Millbrae, right? We chose, like you're in Millbrae, I think, and I'm in Millbrae. We are we want to carefully manage it to be what we thought it's going to be when we decide to move in here, right? Like for the safe safe streets, for example, the school districts, right? Like place to raise your family. At least that's my decision to do that. At the same time, I like to see some growth too, because we need that. What I'm learning right now is that the infrastructure needs to be managed, right? And I've had these complaints about, okay, so water bill. This is a contentious topic. A water bill is expensive, like no doubt it's expensive, right? But you have to look at, of course, the region, right, and how much it went up. And we also buy our water wholesale from SFPUC, and then there's like the overhead that Millbrae puts on top of it. You look at that infrastructure, there's some things that need to be updated, need to be managed, and even outright replace, like certain main pipes, for example. Where's that money come from, right? There's no, like, we don't have this magic wallet off something you just draw money from. So to capture the economy of scale, our city needs to grow, right? And when it grows, this is the first principal concept I talked about earlier. Now, the next question is the infrastructure, right? Like invariably, you're going to have more traffic. Invariably, you're going to have parking problems, right? That's something that's well anticipated. But with technology, with creative thinking, with first principle concepts, right? At least what I can bring in terms of engineering, that's how I'm thinking about problem solving, right? And I'm going to, of course, after these, it's going to be a series of proposals. It's not going to be like what I'm learning also with city is like, unlike the corporate world where you used to make really quick decisions in the meeting, there's a lot of checks and balances and scaffolding where you have these series of meetings ahead of the actual decision, right? So you get an informational, you got to approve the minutes to that informational, then you have a ballot measure even in some cases, and then you go and then fast forward to a resolution, and then it comes to an actual vote. So there's a lot of checks and balances in place to do that. But once we get through all that, right? Ideally, you have a hybrid setup. So the city needs to grow. Certain regions will have a multimodal transportation. By multimodal, it's a term we use where we avoid single occupancy vehicles. Like the worst case is when you have one person using one car, right? We of course want to avoid that, but we also understand. Like I know this for myself, I have to do that when I drive to certain places, right? So we want to be smart about that. Get a situation where we have complex, dense areas that are positioned for buses, for bikes, for even like potentially self-driving cars in the future, right? And shuttles. These are all things that we're thinking about. But then there's regions where we don't want to disrupt that too much, right? Especially like single family homes, like those areas maintain their certain characters. But there's areas where they weren't like, if you look at the BART station, right? There wasn't like a mixed use at that time, right? It was just a parking lot. So we're smart about it. We get mixed use, encourage multimodal transportation, working with our regional partners, right? In that case, Caltrans, Caltrain, BART, all them, SFO. Get like to a hybrid setup where we have a more dense situation closer to the center of the city, downtown. Encourage high density housing, get affordable housing underway, but be careful about it too, right? We don't want to change the neighborhood too much. So I'm big on that. By the way, I don't want to just haphazardly just say, okay, this is affordable. We want to take care of people, but we also want to take care of the other people that are also living there. So there's that again, I'm mentioning hybrid approach. That's my approach right now, is to get my preference is to get all that development underway so we can benefit from the economy of scale. We can benefit from quality of service like we talked about earlier. At the same time, we have regions that then maintain their character. Millbrae maintains its character. We get the hybrid approach. We get the growth. From the growth, we get a tax base that can service better quality of life for everyone while working regionally, right, to make California even better as a whole. So that's kind of my thinking on the ideal Millbrae. If I can, I'm happy to give you more context if that's confusing, but that's kind of my approach.
No, that was super detailed. I was thinking you're just going to say, "Oh, the downtown's going to be cooler."
Well, that'll be the easy way out. But the way I talk, I'm not sure if you picked it up. It's just how I would want someone that conveys policymaking would talk to me, right? Or even I'm like not even one-on-one, but just if I'm part of a crowd, these are things I'd like to hear. I know everyone's different, right? Like one of my problems actually is that you know, I'm learning this. Like I'm just, it's kind of a tangent here, but one of the things that I'm learning is that you just have to be good about celebrating things, right? Celebrating an event, celebrating people's greatness, right? Like there's like this key member, which is all good things. I just doesn't like, my problem is that when I go into a speech, right, I'm thinking problem solving immediately. I'm not thinking, like, it's not to say I don't care about those things, but I'm just going, yeah, you know, like, how am I going to fix this tax problem? Like, and I want to, and that's the thing people care about. I'll talk about that, but I'm learning that you gotta, like, everyone's a little different. So I gotta tune my language to say, you know what, like, I want to really thank this group of people that set up this event. It wasn't easy. And then go into like Lunar New Year example. I want to thank the people that are able to celebrate Asian heritage, right? And its culture, showcase that to the world, showcase that to Millbrae. And it's great on top of the other cultures that we're celebrating, right? So we should be part of that discussion. Like, I get that. It just is not presence of mind for me. I'm learning that firsthand. Just, okay, I'm gonna have to like kind of rewire my brain, so to speak, to speak that way. But like, I don't want to dilute the message. It's essentially problem solving, right? Like my thanks is really the no complaints that hopefully no one will come to me for.
Well, no complaints over here. All right. Bob, I want to thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to try to keep it, slim, because I know I promised a half an hour and we're already over. You're so gracious with your time. So thank you again for coming on, and please promise me when you guys get that group chat to invite me. All right.
Yeah. Like, I'll have to check with we have a city attorney, which is another new thing for me. And I'll have to check with her. Like, everything now is checking with the city attorney. Is this kosher? Is this kosher? But after that checkbox, I will definitely check in with you.
Excellent. All right, Bob. Hey, take care of yourself. I'm sure we're going to be in touch. All right. Take care.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye.